Now, you ended the book on this idea of passing traditions on. So
Yes.
many of us nowadays kind of look to what's the shiny object in the room as the thing to look forward to, whether it's peptides or new supplements and new drugs and vaccines that'll be anti-cancer, instead of looking backwards maybe into the culture we've learned and passing on. How can we cultivate that, especially in a place where I think even in Asia, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, you're starting to lose that with the digital world and younger generation. They're almost rebelling against the wisdom of elders and saying we know the way with AI, with our social media, with content creation. How do we start to change that around and truly pass traditions on?
I think the first step is what the Korean Buddhist nuns do. They're being mindful,
Mm,
even just sort of the gratitude that they demonstrate towards the food that's, in front of them. Going back to what you're saying, we are in this 24/7 digital culture where there's things streaming in front of us all the time, and it makes us mindless. We're not thinking about what we're doing. It's just like we're being presented with something all the time. So I think, even just taking sort of the intentional break, now actually one of my biggest practices is because, I tend to work a lot. I still do because, like, I still want to achieve a lot of things, but I know I have to take time to, sort of, take care of myself. So I will step away from the computer probably like every half hour, or yeah, probably half hour, and just take a few seconds to breathe. And it
mm.
kind of like I breathe in 2 seconds, I pause, breathe out for, double amount the time. And it relaxes me. So it kind of de-stresses, provides more oxygen, but it also provides me with that moment of intentionality. What am I going to do next? And I think if we take that approach for everything that we do throughout the day, because we make a million decisions throughout the day, I think we'll be so much better for it.
Would you recommend people who maybe don't have such a lineage or ability to pass traditions on, meaning they've been Americanized for a long time and, don't really lean back on any different cultures or anything? Would you recommend that people just travel more and observe different cultures then if they can't connect to one themselves?
I think that there's so much to learn from different cultures. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like even just within Asia, they're so different. They have different weather patterns, they have different produce, there's different traditions for each of them. There might be things that, overlap, but they're all very special in their own way, and they all have their own wisdom. So I was able to reconnect with my Korean heritage, but every tradition, every culture has their own wisdom as well. And I think traveling and seeing for yourself and kind of, wrapping your own mind and perspective around it, I think is really important. I think that, one of the examples is that I had always heard of these stories of people kind of like reversing their chronic illnesses, and you sort of want to see it for yourself. It's like hearing about the Sistine Chapel, but then not really seeing it. You see it for yourself, and then it becomes so much more powerful. Like you are actually, I started incorporating a lot of things after seeing it with my own eyes. It just, yeah, it changes you a lot to travel and to see it for yourself.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I think we rely so much on just data and evidence without experience these days, right? We lean into what's on our phones as that has to be the truth of it, or maybe, instead of actually going out and experiencing now. And that's the one thing I always said I was blessed to be able to travel when I was young. It just opened my mind up to what else is out there. But it also made me insanely grateful to be where I am in the world, right? To be able to grow up in America is a blessing in itself when you go to these other places and you see how others live in sometimes poverty-stricken areas, that you start to have this attitude of gratitude really when you travel. So even if you don't connect with the cultures, and you could always get something out of, anywhere you go. And if anything, it's that attitude of gratitude. Do you feel that the Korean culture has that type of gratefulness, embedded in that? Or is that something that it really has to be kind of taught along the way and held in revere? Because It's not just something that comes naturally sometimes.
I think it's definitely embedded in the culture, and
Yeah.
it goes back to family, you know,
Yeah.
respect for family. You know, there's always like a lot of people that I know in Korean culture, they go back on their birthdays and they're so grateful for their parents for giving them life. You know, there's actually a soup. It's miyeokguk soup, and it's a seaweed soup, and it's for your birthday, and it's this way, you know, in sort of a tangible form of being grateful for your lineage, for and when you go to Korea, there's actually holidays that are, you know, respecting grandparents, respecting the children and the parents. You know, the family is very much a part of that. And I think that goes back to gratitude and, you know, who gave you life.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's the nuclear family and just that valuing of family is really important, right? And I think that's what a lot of cultures you can always gain something from and putting that, first. One of the stories that stuck out and made me laugh a little bit in there was your internship at Samsung. And and the fact that when you walk into the office, you take off your shoes and you put on like slippers, right, or Adidas slide-ons, right? And you have these executives probably in very nice three-piece suits with slippers on in meetings. Is
Yeah.
that something you still utilize wherever you are, the idea of taking off your shoes when you enter into a place?
In my own home, I do take off my shoes.
Yeah.
It's just something that I grew up with, but I was so taken aback that they actually do that in the office as well.
Right? Yeah.
Just-
It's one thing in a home, but it's another thing to make
right.
that a sacred space also in an office space where you have, your janitors cleaning every day and things like that. But I think it is kind of a wonderful practice because, you walk around, you bring a lot of things in with you step in and it's something I influenced myself. Obviously, I didn't do that growing up as much. As the American way of just run in with your muddy shoes and someone will clean after that. But it is something I do look at now and kind of value more and more. And those are the kind of things where you're an observer of other cultures, you could bring in those and just question. Yeah, I've been standing out there with all types of stuff, and I'm bringing that into a place where sometimes I lay on the floor or, play around and their children and things like that. Do you feel that we will see New York City, offices start lining up slippers very soon when you walk in? Is that something that we can bring over here?
Um,
Is that an Asian practice?
it stems from, you know, a tradition where, you know, they would eat and sleep on the floor. You know, the floors were really, you know, an important aspect of the home because it became the source of heat. So they
Mm.
would employ, you know, the heat from the stoves and then it would run all the way through into the bedrooms. And it was just a really smart way of like kind of flowing the heat that was already being generated from cooking into, you know, where they were sleeping. And, you know, I think we can take a lot of things from different cultures and gain ideas. Like the American architect Frank Lloyd Wright, he went to Korea, saw the ondols, that's the heated floor that I was talking about, and he started putting that into his own home. You know, taking off his shoes and putting that into his own buildings. And so, yeah, I think we can all sort of think about that. There are a lot of people, you know, when I was working with people in Asia, they would be taking off their shoes. It's pretty, you know, I wouldn't say it's 100% normalized because there are a lot of global corporations that are working in Asia too, but people do take off their shoes often in the office.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. I'm on team take off your shoes now. I used to not be and just be like, what's the point? And you have to wear nice socks now, no holes in them. But that's part of it too, how you present yourself to the world. But I found that really interesting and it stuck out.